ain't got time to take a fast train. Lonely days are gone, I'm a-going home.
Did you know some of the most groundbreaking black music groups of the 1900s have vanished from the spotlight? Discover 20 legendary acts whose timeless legacies deserve to be celebrated once more. Number 20, the McCoys. Ever heard of Hang On Sloppy? Well, it's a song that knocked the Beatles' Yesterday off the charts in 1965. That's how the McCoys made their entrance into music history. Led by teenage guitar prodigy Rick Derringer, they brought a fun, energetic vibe that audiences couldn't get enough of. But the McCoys weren't just about pop hits. They proved their versatility when they teamed up with blues legend Johnny Winter, playing as his backup band on the album Johnny Winter and. This showed that they could handle more serious, blues-inspired rock, proving that their talent went far beyond catchy tunes. As time went on, the McCoys shifted their style, moving away from playful pop and exploring deeper, more complex rock sounds. While they didn't stay in the spotlight as long as some bands, their ability to evolve and experiment cemented their place in music history. So, whether it's the unforgettable chorus of Hang On Sloppy or their behind-the-scenes work with legends, the McCoys remain a symbol of the wild, ever-changing energy of the 1960s rock scene. Now, let's dive into a group that mastered the art of combining jazz and rock. Number 19, Classics 4. Have you ever listened to a song that gives you the goosebumps? Well, that's what Classic 4 contributed to music. This band began in Jacksonville, Florida, in the 1960s. They earned fame by mixing jazz and soft rock into a unique sound. Their music was smooth and heartfelt, and their biggest hits, Spooky, Stormy, and Traces, remain popular today. Spooky began as a jazz song without words, but the band added lyrics, making it a catchy and eerie song that became popular in 1968. Stormy had a romantic and dark feel, and Traces became one of their biggest hits, making it to the top 10. These songs didn't just stay in your mind, they touched your heart. The trip was difficult. Dennis Yost, the lead singer of Classics 4, was the heart of the band. His smooth voice brought their music to life and made their songs memorable. Sadly, Dennis experienced a terrible loss later in his life. In 2006, he fell down a flight of stairs and received severe brain injuries. He died in 2008, even with the help of his friends and fellow musicians, which marked the end of Classics 4. Despite facing difficulties, their music shows how mixing different styles can create something lasting and special. If you've ever enjoyed a jazzy song with a rock vibe, well, you know the charm of Classics 4. Next, let's explore how the Buckinghams rose to stardom with their own twist. Number 18, the Buckinghams. Let's move to Chicago in the mid-1960s. The Buckinghams weren't just any band, they were a group of young musicians who thought big and hit it big. What's funny? Well, they weren't British, but they wanted to sound like they were. British bands like the Beatles were at the top of their charts at the time, so they picked a name that fit well with the era. They found success in 1967 with their popular song, Kind of a Drag. No one thought it would be such a big hit, but it became the number one song of 1967 and stayed on top of the charts for 2 weeks. The Buckinghams were quickly called the most popular band in America. Success brought its own difficulties, though. They weren't prepared with another song when Kind of a Drag became popular, so they had to rush to get music out. Things took a turn for the worst when their director added a strange, psychedelic part to their song Susan to imitate the Beatles. Well, it didn't work out as planned, and radio stations refused to play it, and fans were left confused. Then the rumors started. Their roadies were arrested, and rumors began to spread that the band was connected with drugs, even though they weren't. All of this, along with arguments about their music, caused the band to break up in 1970. Even though they faced challenges, the Buckinghams made a lasting impact on music. They proved that a band from Chicago could succeed and be as well known as the biggest rock stars out there. But while they fought for success in the Midwest, another group in San Francisco was pioneering a brand new sound. Number 17, the Fortunes. Now, let's cross the Atlantic to Birmingham, England, home to the Fortunes. This British band hit it big in the 1960s with their heartfelt song, You've Got Your Troubles. It became an international hit and made them one of the standout acts of the British invasion. The Fortunes didn't just make great music, they were also caught up in one of the wildest scandals of the era. Their manager, Reg Calvert, was involved in a fight over pirate radio stations, illegal broadcasts that played music people couldn't hear anywhere else. In 1966, during an argument at someone's house, Reg was tragically shot and killed. The shocking event rocked the music world and added a dramatic twist to the Fortunes story. But the band didn't let the scandal define them. In 1969, they became the voices behind Coca-Cola's famous ad campaign, singing "It's the Real Thing," a jingle that would become one of the most iconic commercials ever. But while they weathered drama and made advertising history, another artist was setting the stage, literally, on fire. Number 16, the Beau Brummels. In the 1960s, the Beau Brummels were one of the most important rock bands to emerge from San Francisco. They were among the first to combine appealing melodies with sincere lyrics in the folk rock genre, which made them different from other bands of the period. In 1964, they launched their breakout single Laugh, Laugh, which gained them national recognition. The song was a hit, combining folk narrative with an exuberant rock sound. It was produced by Sylvester Stewart, who eventually became known as Sly Stone. Because of their polished sound, many listeners believed that the band was British. This was beneficial to them during the British invasion, when bands from the UK were dominating the music charts. The Beau Brummels were not only a musical group, they also made a significant impact on pop culture. They made an appearance on the Flintstones in 1965, where they played a parody version of themselves as a rock band from prehistoric times. The band's popularity diminished as musical trends changed, even though they had had early success. On the other hand, they had a significant impact on folk rock, which opened the door for bands such as the Byrds and Simon and Garfunkel. The Beau Brummels proved that American bands were capable of competing with British music during a period when British music dominated the radio. Now, let's look at another group whose creativity lit up the scene in their unique way. Number 15, Arthur Brown. Arthur Brown was more than an ordinary musician. He was a showstopper. Every time he took the stage, he made you feel like you were witnessing a movie. He became known as the God of Hellfire when his song Fire became a smash hit in 1968. The song was more than simply a hit. It was a whole experience, featuring powerful vocals, passionate music, and lyrics that would stick with you. However, it was Arthur's theatrical demeanor that truly set him apart from the rest. He would paint his face in bright colors, wear ridiculous costumes, and occasionally even set his head on fire. Yes, his head on fire, with a special helmet, of course, though. His performances were so shocking that they sometimes led to riots breaking out. At one performance, things became so chaotic that the owner of the club paid the band to leave early in order to restore order. Arthur was really thoughtful and artistic about his music, despite all the antics. He studied philosophy and believed that music might be used to examine larger topics like temptation and sin. His 1968 album, which was co-produced by Pete Townsend of The Who, was a rock opera that addressed serious topics in a way that no one else had the courage to do so. Arthur Brown's impact on theatrical rock is unquestionable, even if his popularity was short-lived. His daring and innovative performances have made a significant impact on bands such as Kiss, Alice Cooper, and Marilyn Manson. Arthur demonstrated to the world that music could be more than just sound. It could also be a spectacle. While he pushed boundaries with his bold style, another band quietly wove classical elements into rock, creating something entirely new and unforgettable. Number 14, the Left Banke. The Left Banke brought a unique style to the 1960s with their Baroque pop sound, blending rock with classical music. Their emotional hit, Walk Away Renee, stands as a timeless classic. Written by band member Michael Brown, the song was inspired by his unspoken love for Renee Fladden. who happened to be dating another bandmate. This personal story gave the song its haunting, bittersweet quality that connected with listeners everywhere. But behind the music, the band struggled with constant internal conflicts. Michael Brown's father, Harry Lukowski, managed the group, but his decisions often caused tensions. To make matters worse, the Left Banke split into two rival groups, each claiming to be the real band. Fans were confused, and the drama hurt their popularity. Even though their journey was short and filled with challenges, the Left Banke left a lasting impact on music, proving that combining rock with classical elements could create something truly special. Their influence can still be heard in bands that experiment with orchestral sounds today. Speaking of experimentation, let's talk about a band that worked with one of the biggest names in music, the Beatles themselves. Number 13, the Cyrkle. The Cyrkle may have been around for only a short time, but their connection to the Beatles and their hit song Red Rubber Ball made them unforgettable. Originally called the Rondells, the band caught the attention of Nathan Weiss, a partner of Beatles manager Brian Epstein. And Epstein not only managed them, but also gave them their unique name. In 1966, Red Rubber Ball, written by Paul Simon, became a massive hit, reaching number 2 on the Billboard charts. Its cheerful melody and catchy lyrics made it an instant favorite, earning the band national attention. That same year, the Cyrkle achieved their biggest milestone. They opened for the Beatles during their final U.S. tour, playing at venues like Dodger Stadium and Candlestick Park. The band had a front-row seat to music history. Despite their success, the Cyrkle couldn't sustain their momentum. After their brief time in the spotlight, they faded into obscurity. However, their story is a reminder of how even a short-lived band can leave a mark on music. Number 12, the Flying Machine. The Flying Machine has one of the most perplexing beginnings in the history of music. In fact, they were two bands that had the same name. James Taylor was one of them before he became a well-known solo performer. On the other hand, the band that became well-known for the hit song Smile a Little Smile for Me was an entirely different group. In order to prevent any misunderstandings, they ultimately decided to refer to themselves as the original Flying Machine. In 1969, the song Smile a Little Smile for Me reached number 5 on the charts in the United States and number 4 in Canada. The song was a gentle, heartfelt ballad about heartbreak that struck a chord with those who heard it. It was impossible to forget because of the captivating tune and the lyrics that came from the heart. The Flying Machine was unable to maintain their success beyond their one-hit song. They had a hard time coming out with another hit after that, and the mix-up with James Taylor's previous band didn't make things any easier. Nevertheless, Smile a Little Smile for Me is still a cherished classic, demonstrating that even a band that doesn't last long may produce something that people will remember forever. Now, let's move to a band that broke barriers in one of the most politically charged countries in the world. Number 11, Spiral Staircase. Spiral Staircase might have had an unusual name, but they also had a hit that's unforgettable, More Today Than Yesterday. The band started in 1964 as the Fidelians, performing at an Air Force talent show. After signing with Columbia Records, they adopted the name Spiral Staircase, joining the trend of quirky band names of the 1960s. Their big moment came in 1969, when More Today Than Yesterday became a hit. Written by lead singer Pat Upton, the song's upbeat tune and romantic lyrics captured the spirit of the times. It climbed the charts and became a million seller, cementing their place as one-hit wonders in the best possible way. The band released an album by the same name, featuring covers of popular songs like Proud Mary, but they couldn't replicate the success of their signature hit. Even so, More Today Than Yesterday remains a favorite at weddings, in movies, and on playlists worldwide. Each of these bands had their own unique story, proving that a brief moment in the spotlight can create music that lasts forever. Now that we've looked at bands with short but bright careers, let's explore more hidden gems from this golden era of music. Number 10, Four Jacks and a Jill. Four Jacks and a Jill didn't just make music, they made history. This South African band started in 1964 and gained fame during a time when their country was deeply divided by apartheid, a system of racial segregation. Despite the challenges, they managed to create songs that were loved both locally and internationally. Master Jack, their most popular song, was released in 1968. At first glance, it appeared to be a straightforward ballad about a mining worker who escapes from his employer. However, a lot of listeners thought that it was covertly condemning the government and its harsh apartheid regulations. This gave the song a unique quality that resonated with people from all over the world. It became a worldwide success, reaching number 1 in Canada and Australia, and number 18 on the charts in the United States. The band had challenges along the way. The band felt deceived when their record label decided to let popular vocalist Trini Lopez to record Master Jack and hold the rights to it outside South Africa. Regardless, they achieved history by having 3 songs, Timothy, Master Jack, and I Looked Back, on the charts at the same time. Next, let's explore a band that turned folk and soft rock into a unique success story. Number 9, The Rose Garden. The Rose Garden bloomed briefly but beautifully in the late 1960s. Starting in Los Angeles, as a group called the Blokes, they were originally known for playing covers of songs by the Byrds and others. In fact, the members of the Byrds once told them, "You do our music better than we do." Their big moment came when they recorded Next Plane to London. The song, which featured real airport announcement sounds in the background, captured the dreamy, wistful vibe of the era. It became a hit, reaching number 17 on the Billboard charts in 1967. However, success brought challenges. When they started working on their second single, If My World Falls Through, their managers replaced Jim Ganzer's vocals with a version sung by Diana DeRose, the band's lead singer. This caused major tension within the group, and Jim eventually left. Without him, the Rose Garden quickly fell apart. Next, let's explore how another group combined raw energy with catchy pop to make waves in the 1960s. Number 8, Jimmy Gilmer and the Fireballs. Jimmy Gilmer and the Fireballs created one of the catchiest songs of the 1960s. Jimmy Gilmer and the Fireballs lit up the charts in 1963 with their massive hit, Sugar Shack. The song's unique sound came from a funky little keyboard called the Hammond Solovox, giving it a upbeat and playful vibe that was hard to forget. The lyrics, inspired by songwriter Keith McCormack's aunt, described a cozy coffee shop and young love, a theme that struck a chord with listeners everywhere. Sugar Shack was a smash hit, holding the number 1 spot on the Billboard Hot 100 for 5 weeks. It even became the biggest-selling single of the year. The Fireballs recorded the song at Norman Petty Studio in New Mexico, the same place where Buddy Holly made his legendary tracks. This connection to Buddy Holly added to the band's credibility, showing that they had roots in rock and roll history. But just as quickly as they rose to fame, their spotlight faded. The British invasion, led by the Beatles, took over the music scene in 1964, leaving many American bands, including the Fireballs, struggling to compete. Still, Sugar Shack remains a classic, often featured in movies and commercials, keeping its joyful energy alive for new generations. Speaking of catchy tunes, let's move on to a band that turned a commercial jingle into a chart-topping hit. Number 7, the T-Bones. The T-Bones had one of the most unusual stories in music history. Their journey started with a group of incredibly talented session players, including Leon Russell and Glenn Campbell, who recorded music for TV commercials and other projects. In 1966, one of the recordings, No Matter What Shape Your Stomach's In, based on an Alka-Seltzer jingle, became a surprise hit. The song was entirely instrumental, yet it reached number 3 on the Billboard charts, proving that a good tune didn't need lyrics to be a success. Here's where things got strange, though. The musicians who recorded the hit weren't an actual band. They were studio players known as the Wrecking Crew. When the song blew up, the record label needed a group to perform it live, so they created a new touring band, also called the T-Bones, with musicians who had nothing to do with the original recording. This odd setup didn't last long. While No Matter What Shape was a fun novelty hit, the band couldn't keep the momentum going. The T-Bones quickly faded from the scene, but their story remains a fascinating example of how the music industry worked in the 1960s. From commercial jingles to raw rock energy, let's now dive into a band that helped shape the garage rock scene. Number 6, The Seeds. If you're into raw, edgy music that feels like it's bursting with energy, well, you'd love The Seeds. They were one of the first garage rock bands, and their sound was loud, rough, and full of attitude. Formed in Los Angeles in 1965, the band was led by charismatic frontman Sky Saxon, whose unique voice and rebellious vibe made him stand out. Their most famous song, Pushin' Too Hard, became a garage rock anthem. The song was simple but powerful, driven by a pounding beat and Saxon's defining lyrics about independence and resisting control. It was the kind of music that made you want to jump up and shout along. The Seeds didn't stop there. They also experimented with psychedelic sounds on albums like Future, showing they weren't afraid to push boundaries. Even though they didn't achieve huge commercial success, the Seeds had a big impact on later genres. They inspired punk rock bands like the Ramones and the Stooges, proving that you didn't need a polished sound to make music that connected with people. Their raw energy and do-it-yourself spirit laid the groundwork for the punk movement that would explode in the 1970s. Now, let's explore another band that blended harmony and charm into a short but impactful career. Number 5, Mercy. The story of Mercy is one of the strangest in music history, full of twists and confusion. The band rose to fame in 1969 with their hit song, Love Can Make You Happy, a sweet and emotional track that captured the hearts of listeners everywhere. The song reached number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart and became a staple of the late 1960s pop music. But behind the scenes, things weren't so smooth. Jack Sigler Jr., the band's founder, wrote the song as a love letter to his girlfriend. Just as Mercy was gaining fame, Jack was called to naval duty, leaving a gap that the record label decided to fill in a sneaky way. They created a fake version of the band, complete with an album and promotional photos featuring people who had nothing to do with the real Mercy. This caused major confusion for fans and hurt the band's momentum. Eventually, Warner Brothers re-recorded the song with Jack and his actual bandmate to settle unpaid loyalties. But the damage was done. Mercy's story is a reminder of how complicated the music industry could be, even for a band with a chart-topping hit. Now, let's move on to a group whose sweet harmonies made waves but couldn't quite stay in the spotlight. Number 4, the Peppermint Rainbow. The Peppermint Rainbow brought a bright and cheerful sound to the late 1960s, led by the beautiful harmonies of sisters Bonnie and Patty Lambden. Their biggest hit, Will You Be Staying After Sunday, climbed to number 32 on the Billboard charts in 1969 and stayed there for 14 weeks. The song, with its catchy melody and bittersweet lyrics, perfectly captured the spirit of its time. The band's rise to fame began when they signed with Decca Records and changed their name from the New York Times to the Peppermint Rainbow. Their unique style, mixing pop and soft rock, made them stand out, and their performances on shows like The Generation Gap helped them gain national attention. However, the band struggled to replicate the success of Will You Be Staying After Sunday? Their follow-up single, Don't Wake Me Up in the Morning, Michael, had moderate success but didn't match their earlier hit. By the early 1970s, the Peppermint Rainbow quietly faded away, becoming another example of a talented band with a brief but memorable moment in the spotlight. Speaking of brief success stories, let's look at a band that went from breakthrough hits to tragic struggles. Number 3, The Outsiders. The Outsiders were a rock band from Cleveland, Ohio, who made their mark in 1966 with their breakout hit, Time Won't Let Me. The song was a perfect blend of rock and R&B, featuring a horn section that gave it an energetic and unique sound. It reached number 5 on the Billboard charts and quickly became a classic. But the band's success was overshadowed by tragedy and legal troubles. Guitarist Al Austin tragically died in a car accident at just 19 years old, a devastating loss that deeply affected the group. As they became more popular, their management pushed them to change their gritty, hometown style to fit the California flower power vibe. Fans didn't like the change, and the band's popularity began to fade. Things got even messier when lead singer Sonny Garassi tried to keep the band going under the same name, leading to a lawsuit with another member. Despite the challenges, Sonny went on to find success with a new group, Climax, and their hit song Precious and Few in 1972. Tragically, Sonny's career was cut short after he suffered a brain aneurysm in 2012, and he passed away in 2017. The Outsider's story is one of incredible talent and potential, but also of heartbreak and challenges that prevented them from reaching their full potential. Speaking of young talent, let's move on to a band led by a teenage voice that defined a generation. Number 2, the Box Tops. The Box Tops were a band from Memphis, Tennessee, that made history with their 1967 hit, The Letter. At just 16 years old, lead singer Alex Chilton amazed everyone with his deep, soulful voice that sounded far older than his years. The song, about a man longing to reunite with his love, was short, catchy, and packed with emotion. It topped the Billboard Hot 100 and became an instant classic. Despite their success, the band faced challenges from the start. 2 members, John Evans and Danny Smythe, left the group early to return to school, forcing the band to bring in replacements. Over time, constant lineup changes made it harder for the group to maintain their chemistry. On top of that, the music industry wasn't always kind. For example, during a tour in London, the Box Tops were forced to perform with broken equipment left by another band. It was frustrating and humiliating, but they pushed through. By 1970, the pressure took its toll, and Alex Chilton, along with guitarist Gary Talley, decided to call it quits. Even though their time together was short, the Box Tops left a lasting legacy. They showed the world how soul and rock could blend into something powerful and unforgettable. Their songs, especially The Letter, still play on the radio today, reminding us of the band's incredible talent. Lastly, let's switch gears to a band with an entirely different story, one that featured not 1, not 2, but 3 different lead singers. Number 1, Jay and the Americans. Jay and the Americans were a band that thrived on change, and their lineup of lead singers is proof of that. Over the years, they had 3 different Jays, each bringing their own style to the group. First, there was Jay Traynor, who sang with the band from 1960 to 1962. Then came Jay Black, whose deep, rich voice defined the band's biggest hits. Finally, Jay Renicki joined much later, continuing the band's legacy into the 2000s. What set Jay and the Americans apart wasn't just their ability to adapt, it was the quality of their music. They worked with legendary songwriters Jerry Leiber and Mike Stoller, the same team behind hits for Elvis Presley and the Coasters. This collaboration led to unforgettable songs like This Magic Moment, Come a Little Bit Closer, and Cara Mia. These tracks didn't just dominate the charts, they told stories and connected with listeners in a way that felt timeless. Even though their lineup changed, the band managed to maintain their unique sound. Their music blended pop, rock, and a touch of soul, creating something that appealed to audiences across generations. Jay Black, often called The Voice, was particularly famous for his ability to hit stunning high notes, especially in Cara Mia. Jay and the Americans were also known for breaking barriers. They were the first white group to be signed by Leiber and Stoller, which was a big deal back then at the time. Their success proved that great music could come from anywhere, regardless of the color of the performer's skin. While their time at the top didn't last forever, Jay and the Americans left behind a catalog of songs that still resonate today. They showed that even with different faces leading the way, a band could stay true to its sound and keep its fans coming back for more. And that's a wrap on the 20 best gone but not forgotten black groups of the 1900s. Let's keep their legacy alive. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more amazing stories. See you next time.